The movie opens in 1968 with a young couple named Iris and Paul, who are driving somewhere. Iris is blindfolded and seems very excited, as Paul is about to give her a surprise. Once they arrive at the destination, Paul removes her blindfold, and Iris is stunned to see that he has brought her to Skyview, a new skyscraper restaurant towering above the city. They excitedly begin heading inside when Iris notices a kid stealing a penny from a wishing fountain. They then enter a crowded elevator, and upon reaching the restaurant on the top floor, Paul tells the host that they have a table reserved. But the man apologizes, saying that because of opening night, all the tables are fully booked. This makes Paul feel embarrassed, but Iris tells him not to worry and suggests they head to the bar instead. From there, they see a breathtaking view of the entire city, but Iris is filled with anxiety because of how high up they are. Later, as several people swirl and dance on the glass floor, a bartender is seen popping open a bottle of wine, and the cork flies into a chandelier. As a result, a shard breaks off and falls, causing a crack on the floor. In the bathroom, Iris throws up, and we notice a kid there whose mom is one of the singers in the restaurant. The singer suddenly asks Iris how far along she's in her pregnancy. Iris nervously reveals it's been 1 or 2 months, but she's a bit fearful because her boyfriend doesn't know yet. Afterward, Paul takes her to the terrace, where they savor the stunning view of the city. He then seizes the moment to tell her he loves her and drops to one knee to propose marriage. Iris eagerly accepts, and then shares the news of her pregnancy, which lights up his face with joy. While the couple is celebrating their engagement, we see the troublesome kid from earlier toss a coin from the tower, but a sudden gust deflects it into the ventilation ducts, causing a fan to jam. Next, Paul and Iris return to the restaurant, where they begin dancing among the other guests, but they are unaware that the dance glass beneath them is starting to crack. Elsewhere, that coin jammed in the fan sets off a dangerous chain reaction, as gas begins leaking into the restaurant, and screws start flying loose. Here, Iris senses something bad is about to happen. But before she can react, the glass beneath them shockingly breaks, plummeting many people to their deaths. Paul is left hanging from a piece of glass, while Iris can't do anything other than see him lose his grip and die. To make matters worse, a chef accidentally sets a woman on fire amid the chaos. She runs around the restaurant in panic, hitting the leaking gas that causes a massive explosion that tears through the building and claims countless lives. An employee then urges the survivors to flee down the emergency stairs, but as everyone rushes together, the structure suddenly collapses, killing even more people. Iris watches in horror as the entire structure starts to tear apart, people plunging through shattered windows. Suddenly, a piano begins moving, and as the coin from earlier lands on it, the massive instrument collapses and crushes the remaining survivors. Meanwhile, the troublesome kid from earlier rejoices that he's safe, but the piano smashes down on him, silencing his laughter forever. Upon witnessing the devastation, Iris breaks down in tears, but she soon spots the singer's son alive and crying for help. She quickly rushes to save him, but the fragile remains of the restaurant crumble beneath them, leaving them dangling by a piece of concrete. The only thing keeping them from falling is Iris's ring, which eventually tears off the skin, causing them to fall to their deaths, and the scene cuts to the present day, where a girl named Stefani wakes up screaming from this nightmare in the middle of class. That night, she has the same terrifying nightmare and screams, which infuriates her roommate. Stefani informs her roommate that the woman in her dreams is named Iris, which is the same name as her grandmother. But the problem is that she has never met her grandmother and has no idea if she's alive. Her roommate advises her to go home and find her grandma, hoping it will finally stop the nightmares for good. The next day, Stefani arrives home and asks her dad, Marty, about a box of her mom's old stuff, as she wants to find her grandma. But Marty reveals that he got rid of them after her mom left years ago. This disappoints Stefani, but then her younger brother Charlie arrives and reveals that he's going to their cousin's place. Stefani also decides to join him, hoping she can at least get some answers there. Sometime later, the siblings arrive at the home of their uncle Howard, who is their mother's brother. They meet their aunt, Brenda, and their cousins, Eric, Bobby, and Julia. Stefani then informs Howard about her recurring nightmare and how it's been affecting her grades. She explains that she just wants to find her grandma Iris, hoping she can help with the situation. But Howard responds by telling her that Iris was a deeply disturbed woman. After Howard's dad died, Iris refused to let him and his sister leave the house, insisting that death was following them. Things became so bad that the state had to intervene and place them in a foster home, but even then, Iris tried to track them down. And when the grandkids were born, she began sending disturbing letters filled with horrifying photos of dead bodies. Howard warns his niece that her grandmother is very dangerous and advises her to stay away from her. Regardless, Stefani refuses to give up and begs for help from Aunt Brenda. She claims that her life is falling apart because of the recurring nightmare and that she's on the verge of losing her mind. Feeling bad for her, Brenda finally tells her about a drawer where Iris's old letters are kept. And upon finding Iris's young picture, Stefani is stunned to realize that it's the same woman from her nightmare. In the next scene, Stefani drives deep into a remote area to meet her estranged grandma. She finally arrives at the house that looks more like a bunker, with massive metal doors and heavy defenses. Stefani approaches a security camera and speaks with Iris, revealing that she's her granddaughter. Upon hearing this, the old woman orders her to leave her keys and cell phone in a metal box before stepping inside. Stefani complies and heads inside the cabin, where Iris tells her to walk inside slowly.
Shut the door. Quick, quick, quick!
Stefani is shocked to see her grandma for the first time in her life. Iris, on the other hand, is thrilled to see her and immediately asks about her mom, Darlene, but Stefani reveals that her mom left them when she was 10 and hasn't heard from her since. She explains that she's here because, for the past few months, she's been plagued by recurring nightmares about the Skyview disaster. Upon hearing this, Iris explains that the events she saw were not just a dream, but her premonition. Iris reveals that when Paul was proposing to her, she had a premonition about what was going to happen. She reacted quickly and took the coin from the troublesome boy, which would have started the entire chain of events. Iris then went inside, took the singer's microphone, and ordered everyone to leave because the glass floor was breaking. As a result, she ended up saving many lives that night, and the restaurant was also closed permanently. But it turns out death doesn't like it when people interfere in its plans, so after the incident, it began hunting people one by one who were supposed to die that night, including Paul. Iris further reveals that over the years, she has been learning everything there is to know about death and anticipating its every move. She had been keeping death at bay, until 2 months ago when she learned she had cancer. Iris takes out a book she made and tells Stefani to stay here to learn about death, as their entire family is in danger. She claims they will be safe here since she hasn't stepped out in 20 years. However, Stefani thinks her grandma is crazy and tells her that she should never have come here. Stefani then proceeds to leave, and as Iris reaches the doorstep, she gets a premonition that something bad is going to happen if she steps outside. But despite the warning, she rushes to her granddaughter and frantically begs her to keep the book. She then asks Stefani to take a step back and watch to prove that it's all real. And then all of a sudden, the scene then cuts to Iris's funeral, where everyone feels bad for Stefani, as she had to witness such a horrific tragedy. At this moment, Darlene unexpectedly arrives to pay her respects to her late mother, which shocks everyone. But Stefani is enraged by her mom's audacity to suddenly return after abandoning them years ago. The next morning, the whole family gathers at Howard's house for a barbecue, and even Darlene shows up. Elsewhere, Stefani takes out her grandmother's book and discovers a coin inside, the one that was supposed to set off the chain of events. She finds several drawings Iris made in the book, depicting the many ways a person can die. Suddenly, a gust of wind blows a family picture to the ground, and a single shard of glass falls right in front of her. This worries Stefani, and she immediately decides to head to her uncle's house to make sure everyone is safe. Not long after, Stefani arrives at the party, and she sees everyone is safe. But her relief instantly shatters when Howard accidentally steps on a piece of glass and collapses, just as a lawn rake falls onto the mower and accidentally activates it. The mower lunges forward and brutally slashes his face. After Howard's funeral, Stefani is convinced that her grandmother was right and begins obsessively studying her book. She explains to her family how death has come for every single person who was at that sky tower that day. Because there were so many survivors, it took years to catch up to Iris, who was one of the last to die in the premonition. Stefani explains that while death pursued each person, the others continued to have kids and grandkids. This means death will now come after Iris's descendants, who never should have existed in the first place. Stefani claims that her dad and Aunt Brenda are safe since they aren't Iris's descendants, and death came for Uncle Howard first because he's the oldest. So, if they follow the order, the next victim will be her cousin Eric, followed by Julia and Bobby. After death is done with Howard's family, it will come for Darlene and her kids. Unfortunately, her family doesn't believe a word of it and only gets upset. The next morning, a panicked Stefani wakes Charlie up early because Eric hasn't answered her calls all night. The siblings get worried and immediately rush to his home to check on him. But they're relieved to find that Eric is completely fine and healthy. Stefani still urges him to be careful, but Eric just laughs it off and arrogantly claims that he's immune to death. At this moment, Julia exits the house to jog when suddenly, a chain of events begins to unfold.
Because death's not coming for our family.
A garbage collector unknowingly dumps Julia into the compactor. Upon seeing this, Stefani, Eric, and Charlie rush toward the truck, as the crusher mode has already been activated. The boys frantically try to get his attention, but the garbage collector is wearing headphones and remains oblivious. Meanwhile, Stefani climbs onto the truck and desperately tries to pull Julia out. But as soon as she grabs her hand, the compactor closes with a sickening crunch, crushing Julia's head. In the next scene, we see the family crying over Julia's death, and they finally believe that Stefani was telling the truth. She admits she was wrong about the order, but then Brenda reveals a shocking truth. It turns out that Eric isn't Howard's biological son, and she had an affair with another man. This revelation infuriates Eric, so Brenda tearfully apologizes, explaining that their marriage was going through a rough patch back then. Upon hearing all this, Bobby realizes he's next on death's list and urgently asks Stefani for help. They then review Iris's notebook, which mentions that a man named JB found someone who cheated death and survived. When Darlene hears this, she reveals that Iris talked about JB often, and he works at a hospital not far away. With this information, Charlie, Darlene, Stefani, Bobby, and Eric decide to visit this person to seek help. They soon arrive at the hospital, where they finally meet JB, who works in the morgue. We then shockingly learn that he's the same child who was the singer's son, and the last to die after Iris. JB reveals that Iris had tracked him down many years ago and helped him see the truth. He was the one who helped her fortify the cabin and provided medical supplies for her condition. When the group asks how they can survive, JB reveals that the first option is to kill someone else, which gives them the amount of time the victim had left. But if they really want to break the cycle, they have to die themselves. JB informs them that a woman was on death's list, but she died briefly and was flatlined, before being revived by doctors. This finally broke the chain, and she managed to cheat death and survive. Regardless, JB reveals that he's tired of all this, so the only thing he'll do is enjoy what's left of his life, since he's sick just like Iris. He asks them to do the same and stop obsessing over death. Afterward, the group is panicking over what to do when Eric comes up with the idea of killing Bobby and then resuscitating him. Stefani doesn't agree with this, but Eric manages to convince his brother and takes him away. He plans to give Bobby peanut butter, which the latter is deadly allergic to, and since they are in a hospital, the doctors will revive him. Eric tries to get a peanut butter cup from a vending machine, but when the coil malfunctions, he smashes the glass to grab the snack. Next, they enter a room with an MRI machine, which Eric unknowingly activates. He then takes Bobby's EpiPen, after which the latter begins eating peanuts. Not long after, the allergic reaction begins to take effect, and Bobby finds it difficult to breathe. Eric tries to take Bobby to the ER, but he accidentally increases the MRI's power using his phone. The magnetic force of the machine violently pulls every metal object toward its core, including Eric's piercings, causing him to scream in pain. Even worse, the machine's force causes a wheelchair behind Eric to slam into him, pushing him violently inside the MRI. He is then brutally crushed and impaled by the jagged metal, while his helpless brother watches in horror, gasping for breath. Afterward, Bobby crawls to Eric's body to grab his EpiPen and manages to inject himself just in time. It looks like he's going to be okay, but then a nurse suddenly opens the door, pulling a sharp metal object from outside. After this, Darlene and her kids feel utterly distraught, and they decide to lock themselves in Iris's cabin, as it's the only safe place left. Here, the cursed coin from Skyview, which was with Stefani, slips out of her pocket unnoticed. Moments later, an old lady stumbles upon it, and she keeps it for herself. Not long after, the three arrive at Iris's cabin, but Stefani's seatbelt gets jammed, and she can't get out. She still urges the other two to proceed, because as long as Darlene is safe, they can't die. However, before Darlene can enter the house, a sudden spark causes a massive explosion from within, leaving her severely injured. At the same time, the vehicle flips over into a nearby body of water, submerging Stefani inside. She struggles to unfasten her seatbelt, while Charlie is pinned beneath a large boulder. Fortunately, a bloodied Darlene drags herself to her son and frees him. But sadly, a collapsing light pole crushes her to death. Next, a distraught Charlie rushes to his sister and manages to release her from the vehicle and pull her out of the water. She's already lost consciousness, but after several desperate attempts, he finally manages to bring her back to life. The siblings then rejoice upon realizing that Stefani came back from death, which means the curse is finally broken. Despite this, the siblings break down and mourn the loss of their mother. The scene then cuts to a few days later, when life has returned to normal, and Charlie arrives at his prom date's house with Stefani. Not far away, the old lady from the hospital accidentally drops the cursed coin, which rolls away. It eventually lands in the middle of a train track. At the same time, Stefani and Charlie meet his girlfriend's dad, who is a doctor. Stefani proudly reveals how her brother brought her back from the dead. However, the doctor explains that if she were only unconscious, and Charlie got her breathing again, then her heart never stopped, meaning she wasn't technically dead. Hearing this, the siblings are stunned, and Stefani begins noticing various signs hinting at how they could die right now. Then, out of nowhere, a train suddenly derails and starts heading straight toward them. They manage to evade the train and believe they are safe this time. But thus, we reach the end of this movie. Thanks for watching. If you like the movie, support us. Don't forget to subscribe for more movie recaps. See you in the next movie. Goodbye.